Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another special edition. So our facilitator this afternoon is someone we all familiar with. He's a seasoned procurement professional and a respected practitioner in Lagos State Public Service. Uh, Public Service. We are privileged to have with us Mr. Subar Akintunde Maruf, Head of Procurement Department, Lagos State Public Service Procurement Agency. Given the critical role of procurement in promoting transparency and accountability value for money and effective service delivery, we are delighted to have him share his knowledge and practical experience on procurement, public service procurement guidelines and regulations. So we are sincerely appreciate your willingness to be with us today, despite that he just landed from traveling. And we thank you for accepting the offer because the offer came in impromptu. And you said, okay, no problem, you are going to take it as long as you want to give back to people and help people. So the essence of this call is to support and do the revision for those who are aspiring the post of a permanent secretary. By the grace of God, we are going to say congratulations to them soon. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Subar Akintunde Maruf to the call. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, my convener, Mr. Jamio Nosaya.
Yes,
It's
sir.
a pleasure for me to be back here with you on this series. I am delighted and I feel honored to be invited to speak with our PS candidates, our guests to be. I first of all want to wish everyone on this call the best of luck in the forthcoming interview. What I'll try to do will be to take us through those salient points in public procurement, those issues we believe you may encounter during the interview concerning public procurement. We've been around for a while, like we all know, but we still need to sometimes remind ourselves of the nitty-gritties of the process, such that by the time, inshallah, some of us become permanent secretaries and all that, we would be comfortable interacting with our procurement office, the procurement officers there, and ultimately with the public procurement agency as well. The mode of this presentation would be like we've had before. We'll just run through some of the key principles of procurement, the practices, and all that. Then the second segment, we'll look at our flow chart, what the procurement agency expects us to do during implementation of procurement in our various offices. And then the third segment will be what I did the last time when we were preparing officers for promotion interview. We had a catalog of what I call glossaries of procurement terminologies and their meanings, so that I believe if we go through this in itself, it will make it easy for us to understand procurement processes, and how to navigate our ways through procurement. So having said that, we want to dive quickly into the process and see how far we can go within the 1 hour plus that we have. We intend to look at the appropriate definition of public procurement. We'll also look at the principles. I hope my slide is visible to everyone. There's a slide, and if it's visible, you can just give a thumbs up or something so that we can go on. So we'll look at the appropriate definitions of public procurement. We'll look at some of the principles and objectives of the process, the methods of applying or implementing public procurement processes that we would be we should be familiar with. Then, like I said earlier, process flow chart that will tell us the process that we expect us to go through while implementing public procurement. We'll also have a looking into disposal of assets. Disposal of assets. Then, like I said earlier, we'll go through the flow charts fully, and then the questions, I mean, the glossaries of terms and terminologies in procurement. So, to go straight into what we have now, so we say public procurement. What exactly is public procurement? I know we are all used to the term procurement, even as an English word. You know, procurement means that you want to buy something, want to pick up something from somewhere, and all that. That's what we can liken procurement to. So procurement is when you want to buy some items, you know, from the market or from any source, and you're exchanging funds, legal tender for that item you want to buy. So there are some synonymous uh, terms with procurement. You look at buying. Somebody will say, okay, what do you do in procurement? They are just there to buy what you need for us. But do we really think that buying and procurement are the same thing? And then procurement in itself, when you talk about public procurement and, of course, private procurement, what are those differences within them and all that? So I'll start by saying that if at any point in time you go to a market and exchange the legal tender, naira, dollar, whatever, for the items that you want, you are buying that item because you need that item. But in the case of procurement, we'll define procurement as the method of discovering and agreeing to terms of purchase of the goods, services, or other works items from external sources, often with the use of a tendering or competitive bidding process. So I'll explain why procurement's definition is coming this way. When we talk about buying, if I move into Ikeja City Mall and I find a fine shirt that I like, I will just look at the price. Because it's my money, I would buy. Sometimes what we call impulse buying. You go into the shop, you're looking for a shirt, you find a fine tie, you never planned for the tie, you go on and buy tie. You can change your mind and stop buying the shirt and buy just the tie because it is buying. In the case of procurement, there has to be predetermined decisions. You don't just move in and say, want to buy this, and then you buy. Procurement entails an entire end-to-end process. It starts from needs assessment. So you decide that your MDA, your office, requires certain items, whether they are goods, whether they are services to be provided by some of our consultants, or whether you're looking at some works item. So you would have had the needs assessment have an issue for your entity that will need X, Y, Z. You list the items that you need. After the needs assessment, there would be appropriation, provision of funds, preparation for the funds with which you would buy or acquire these goods, these works or services that you intend to get for your office. After the needs assessment and the provision of funds, you will get necessary approvals. Need we say that the era where you will just come up with an idea and buy things that you need is gone. With procurement, there must be planning. Planned. Those items would have been contained in your budget. There will be appropriation for it, and there will be appropriate approvals for it. Now we know we have different levels of approval anyway. So based on the required level of approval for the threshold of the item you need, you get the necessary approvals as well.
Hello,
before you now commence the
hello, sir.
proper procurement. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I'm with you. Can
Maybe
you
you
hear
should
me?
off. Yeah, maybe you should off your. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Maybe you should off your video because the network is cracking, sir. I don't know if it's that
Ah,
possible for me, sir. For you, sir.
okay. So I should just go through the presentation without the video,
But I don't know.
without
Maybe it's
the
only me that
slides.
experience it.
I don't know. I don't know.
No, 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 not
Okay,
the
let me try.
slide. I mean your own video, not the slide. Leave the slide.
Is this what you want? Hello?
Okay, it's still breaking. I think
My
it's
video is
network,
off
sir.
now.
Okay, no problem.
I should be the network
Uh,
then. My video is off now.
yes, sir. Okay, yes, sir. Okay, go ahead, sir. Sorry, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So, let me just get back to the slide it was. We're defining procurement in a while now. Fine. So, for procurement to happen, you would have had your needs assessment, appropriation of funds, necessary approvals with those items listed in our uh, budget for the year, and then there'll be a plan for it, the procurement plan, and all that and all that. Now, need we say also that the questions we're getting at this point is that, so are you saying that once we prepare our budget and we prepare our plan, we can't attend to any other thing that comes up impromptu or on uh, planned for? No, procurement allows us to do what we call emergency procurement for the things we do. But then you want to ask yourself, the funds you need to run those things just coming up, where are you going to get the funds from? A lot of times we'll go for special votes from MEPP and all that. So we can have situations where items that are not in our budget initially can come up for application. But even at that, we'll still need to allow for proper process, proper procurement process to be done. For instance, we don't expect that the accounting officer will just come up maybe along the line during the year, in the third, the fourth, the fifth month of the year, and say, look, I now want to acquire certain items that are not in the budget. And you say, because it's not in the budget and it's not in the procurement plan, so just give me the money, give me the funds, let me go to the market and procure these items ourselves. That will not be right. Even when you are going through such impromptu, quote unquote, items, procurement of items are cropped up impromptu, you will still need to provide for necessary processes. Except, for instance, when you look at real force majeure, like the time of COVID or any health challenge, even sometimes we have physical properties being damaged, roof being blown off in schools or in public buildings, and we need to attend to them as soon as we can. Yes, in those situations, we don't need to start going through the process of issuing out documents, waiting for the documents to come in, evaluation committee, approval, and all that and all that. So what we do, what procurement prescribes for us at such time is that you call in service providers that you are familiar with. You ask them to carry out those assignments, probably provide the goods or the service, or carry out the necessary works to be done. And then you document with the hope that when things are settled and we return to normalcy, we would look at those documents and ensure that due diligence was done. We don't want a situation where anyone will take the government for a ride and say, because it is COVID period, because it's an emergency situation, items that are supposed to be procured for 100,000, you sell it to us at 300,000. Of course, we want to go back first and foremost to those service providers that we are used to, and we have a price range, a price bracket that we are used to attending with them. We ask them to carry out these assignments or supply the goods for us. document the activities with the hope that when normalcy returns, we'll go through the document, ensure that things are properly done, and then we'll pass on, such that perchance, if any service provider had taken undue advantage of the system, then that service provider can be blacklisted. So the fact that we're implementing emergency procurement processes does not mean that we'll have a free rein period where things are done without control. So we're defining procurement before we got to this extent to say that procurement is a method of, agreeing to the terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services from external service providers, external sources, often with the use of tendering or competitive bidding. So I also need to speak to the fact that we are looking at external service providers. So the question comes in now. If we have our own officers who want to provide, say, a consultancy service, or you want to do some kind of, what do you call it now? We want to do some kind of lecture series, capacity building processes, and we want to involve our own in-house officers. Yes, we can do that. We don't need to extend documents to them like service providers. But what it means is that their services will be coming in as a non-procurable assignment. Unlike when we are having to engage a consultant from outside, we expect the consultant to be registered, we expect the consultant to pay taxes, we agree to the terms and conditions, the payment terms, and all that. But you have a senior officer within the system. For instance, the engineers or the accountants, they look for an experienced person to take some of our officers through some of our training processes, capacity building processes. That will still be done. But the procurement process will be doing there will be what we call a non-procurable service, because you are not having them going to competition, no tendering, no competitive bidding with other service providers before you choose who you are going to offer, who is going to offer that assignment to you. But beyond that, we expect every other assignment to be provided by external service providers, and they will go through competitive tendering processes. The only exemptions are when we have what you call direct contracting. Direct contracting. And there are reasons or provisions why we'll go into direct contracting situations. One of such reasons is that you may have a service provider who is already engaged with you through a competitive bidding process. And then you need a little more of what that service provider has provided. You don't need to go through a new procurement process to increase this. For instance, you have a service provider supply 10 ACs to your ministry. Now you need a little more. You need a few more, maybe 4 more, 5 more, for whatever reasons. You may not go through another round of competitive process. Since you have what we call a sitting contractor or a sitting supplier, subsitting supplier that has just provided that item to you. If the item's price is not changing, you can have that fellow by direct contracting supply a few more. Maybe you want 2, 3, or 4 more to be added to the initial 10 you had awarded. So in such situations, we talk about direct contracting. In goods, in works, you can also have direct contracting process. So for instance, you have a contractor who has just constructed a drain of 150 meters. You know that's the initial award. But for some reasons, maybe extension of road or some other things, you need another 50 meters, 70 meters of that drain to run to get to the discharge point. You can have direct contracting with that initial contractor to complete the extra 50, 70 meters of drain, provided his cost is not changing. So in such situations, you can have awards without competitive bidding. But for that, the default process for procurement is to have competitive bidding process. So we say that procurement is the method of discovering and agreeing to terms and purchasing goods, services, or other works from an external source, often with the use of competitive process. We also look at public procurement as a professional process for the acquisition of goods, works, and services by public entities, applying public funds to meet their ministerial responsibilities and assignments to the citizen. So what is key here now is to say that anytime we apply public funds for the acquisition of goods, works, and services, we must go through proper public procurement process. Once the funds you are applying to provide the goods, works, and services is public fund, then you must go through public procurement process. Public fund does not end with only appropriated or budgeted funds. A lot of our agencies and ministries enjoy funds from donor agencies and other such grants and stuff like that, because all these still come under public funds, even though they are not appropriated funds. The expenditure, the expending of such funds will still be done via public procurement processes. So for our health sectors and any other office or any other sector of the government where we have grants and all such things, the expenditure of such grants will still be done via public procurement. So public procurement will also want to state that it's no longer now a routine duty of just a routine administrative duty, but it is structured from what I've said thus far. You see, there are things to be done, processes to be followed, laws, rules, procedures, principles, and practices, which are the things we're intending to look through here now that guide the expenditure of public funds whilst we carry out public procurement. So we now see that public procurement processes is not just routine administrative duty, but they are based on our laws. Now we are applying the 2021 public procurement law. That's what we have. We have our core values. We look at that now. We have our principles and practices that guide the application or the implementation of public procurement. Even for we, the public procurement officers, we have our rules, we have our objectives, and we have everything, our ethics that guide the conduct of our processes. There are ethics, and you see, procurement is not just a run-of-the-mill of what we want to do. I just mentioned now that we have the 2012, sorry, in 2012 was when we have the Public Procurement Agency being established. Then we started with our 2011 law. But over time, we've had the law pass through some processes, and what we are using now is the 2021 Public Procurement Law. So the agency is primarily set up to ensure the following goals: probity, accountability, and transparency in procurement, in public procurement by the state. Probity and accountability, and then transparency. So in carrying out these assignments or ensuring that this is done, we get to work closely with a number of other sister offices, especially the audit office, the accountants, the planners, the people we call the fiduciary team, to ensure probity and accountability, then transparency in public government expenditure, what we talk about public finance management, PFM. A lot of times we have cross-cutting issues with these other offices that the auditors, the accountants, the planners in carrying out our public procurement assignment. But need we say that the agency in itself is a regulatory agency for the implementation of all these assignments in our various MDAs. The assignments themselves itself will be conducted by our procurement officers that are seated with you in your MDAs, in your ministries, departments, and agencies. What we do from the agency, the Lagos State Public Procurement Agency, is to ensure compliance with the law, compliance with the procedures, the processes as laid down by the law, while your procurement office does the implementation and then approach the agency for one form of approval or another. So the agency ensures probity, accountability, and transparency by overseeing your assignments, your procurement activities in your various MDAs. Now, the principles and objectives of public procurement, as you can see on the screen. The process aims to achieve economy, efficiency, fairness, transparency, value for money, and accountability. I will go through them, one after the other to really explain how procurement looks at these items. In economy, we are saying that we want to ensure that we do the things we do to ensure that we are not wasting funds, we are not wasting time, or we are not wasting human resources. So there has to be economy. And I give an example. We talk about competitive processes, the fact that we must advertise and all that. Now, because of economy, we'll sometimes say that at a certain threshold, you may not need to advertise. You do what we call national shopping. You invite a few known service providers because we want to ensure, for instance, if you want to buy stationary items of just maybe 1 million, 5 million, you may not need, it may not be economical for us to go through the route of publishing in the papers, putting it on our website, asking service providers to return bids, you sit down to evaluate and stuff like that. But because we know these are everyday off-the-shelf items, we already have some people who are used to our system who do what we call national shopping. We don't need to advertise. We just invite 3, 4, or 5 of such service providers to attend to the items we need. They'll give us their quotations. We'll still sit down to evaluate. The evaluation committee will look at the quotations of these few firms, then pick the one that is best suited for us, go through normal approval processes, get the desired approval document from the PPA, and then you go on to advertise. So economy is key in procurement. We don't, in local parlance, some people will say that I can spend 100 naira. I can spend 1 million if you are owing me 5,000 naira. That is no longer economy. In procurement, we look at what you are spending vis-a-vis what you intend to get. So that's where we look at economy. You try and ensure that you make the best use of the fund. And we also look at efficiency and flexibility of what you're doing. Efficiency this time is looking at what you're getting in returns for what you are doing. Which one is the most efficient process for what we want to do? So that encourages us to be flexible in some of the things we do. Procurement encourages flexibility to allow for efficiency. Then there's fairness. Fairness now, in this case, is a very, very key objective of procurement. So they say that in procurement, we say that when you are engaging in public procurement, open competitive process, you must give every service provider equal opportunity. That's the fairness we're looking at here now. Every one of them would have equal access to information, equal access to everything that is available for them to turn in the best bids they have. Fairness also means that you will listen to them. They may need clarification to your bids. You must listen to them and let them have the best of information that will assist them to turn in the best bid. Even after you would have made a decision on who you want to do the assignment for you, you've picked the preferred service provider, you still allow those who are not successful to know why they failed. That's fairness, so that they'll be better prepared for the next exercise or the next opportunity. So you must be fair to all concerned. Be fair to all your service provider and be fair to the government itself that is spending the money. Be fair to your agency. And that's the way we will be, applying proper public procurement. Then there's transparency. Transparency now is saying that everything we do is not enough that we are doing seen and documented and available for whoever wants to see it, that we are doing the right thing. So there has to be transparency. And because procurement cuts across technical lines, professional lines, you must allow everybody to come up with their positions on the item or the process you are going into. For instance, you want to acquire engineering items or medical items. You allow those in the area to have their say in what they want. Even during evaluation, you must have professionals from that field to be involved in the evaluation. We're not going to sit down as procurement officers and evaluate the supply of technical items without those who are who will use the item in there during the evaluation process. Everything we do has to be transparent. And then we also need to note that procurement allows for 10 years documentation keeping. What that means is that anything you do today in 2025, 2026 rather, you complete it and document. You would keep those documents, and those documents are subject to audit, subject to review. That's what procurement allows. So you do proper document keeping. And then, of course, value for money. This is the one that everyone knows all about. In fact, sometimes they say what procurement is synonymous with is value for money. You want to get the value, the right value for the money you are spending. Priority and result focused. That's what we mean by value for money. You must give priority to those things that are key to us, and you have to be focused on the desired goal. You know, ab initio talked about the first step being needs assessment. So those your needs that you assessed has to be the focus all through the process. How do you meet those needs? So that's what we look at during value for money assessment, to be sure that everything you are doing is aimed towards achieving those priorities and those focused assignments that you had ab initio. Then there has to be accountability, ownership for the decisions you've taken, and responsibility. We know errors here and there once in a while, but you must own up to your responsibility and then try to ameliorate any errors that you've come up with. There has to be total accountability for activities done, for decisions taken, and anything you've done in public procurement. It is not a process that allows bulk passing. Own up to responsibilities, ameliorate where possible, and allow necessary remedial actions to be taken.
Okay, sorry. I think his network from his end. Please bear with us. Yes, let me reach out to him. It's network from his end. Please, most of the video here is showing room. What have you? You can if you can help us of your video, we'll be very glad. Please.
Hello,
Okay, sir. Welcome back, sir.
I'm back. Okay. At what time did I go off, please? I'm not too sure.
Uh, I can't even remember.
Did I complete the principles and practices of
No,
principle
no,
and objectives?
okay. You are on that. You are on that, sir.
Okay, this slide.
Please reshare the slides, sir.
Okay.
Okay. You are on account. What is it called? Okay, you are on accountability, sir.
Is the slide back?
About to. Yes, it's back, sir.
Okay, this is the slide I was on, Abi.
Accountability. Yes, yes, this side. Yes, yes.
All right. All right. So the only thing I just said after that was to explain the ethics of procurement that we look at you're being honest, doing the right thing, else we are carrying out public procurement process. You do things with honor and integrity and high morals while we are carrying out public procurement process. So that was what I had on the principles and objectives of public procurement. The next thing we're to look at is the procurement methods. Procurement methods. And I was saying that for goods and works, we have similar methods, procurement methods, whilst the methods for services are slightly different. We call those ones selection methods. But for goods and works, we have procurement method. The the default procurement method is what we call the open competitive bidding process. Open competitive bidding process. That's what we expect us to do, but we can have variants and reasons why we don't go through that. Or the first of those under the open competitive method is what we call the ICB, International Competitive Bidding. As the name shows, international. This is when we open up the process to firms, to companies from outside the shores of our land. So sometimes you may need to open it up to get the best for the assignment. You want to open it up to companies from outside. For instance, you want to supply, say, the best of X-ray machines to Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. You may not want to restrict yourself to suppliers within Nigeria. You want to open it up to other suppliers from Germany, from US, from wherever, so that you'll get the best of that X-ray machine. So in that, you will be applying what we call the international competitive bidding process, where the documents requesting for bids, the publications will be done in foreign journals, will be on the website of the agency, the website of your firm, and any other place that you believe will make it accessible to those companies from outside the shores of Nigeria. And one key thing there is that once you adopt the international competitive method, you would allow bid in foreign currency. But you would also state the date that you will use as a conversion rate for their foreign currency. You also need to inform the firms, whether you allow what we call domestic preference or not. Domestic preference basically is saying that you know that these foreign firms have advantage over local firms. So you may allow one or two yard for the local firms to give them a bit of preference. That's what we call local content preference, domestic preference for them. So those are the key things about international competitive bidding process. The next one is a limited international bidding process. This one is still international, but in this case, you are not opening it to everybody outside. You just pick a few known firms that are international and you send your request to them for them to partake in the process. But the third one is the one that is restricted to only firms from within the shores of our land. We call that the National Competitive Bidding Process, NCB. That's one that is we are very familiar with. But in this process, we are restricted to only firms that are local, that are based in the country. Even when you have firms with affiliation outside, be treating them as local firms, and you'll be dealing with only the local arms of their firm. So these are the three methods that we apply under what we call the open competitive bidding methods that is applicable for goods and works, provision of goods and works. Now, like I said earlier, for services, we have what we call consultancy selection method. That's different from the procurement method we just looked at for goods and works. So for services, we have consultancy selection method, and the default of them is the one we call the quality cost-based selection method. What it means is that we're going to be looking at the technical presentation and the financial presentation of your consultant, and then you have a blend of both of them to achieve or arrive at the preferred service provider or consultant. So both the technical, which is the quality, and the financial, which is the cost proposals, will be looked at, will be analyzed, and then there will be a method. We have a way of merging the scores of both the technical and the financial proposal scoring to get what we call the quality cost-based selection method. That, again, I say, is a default method for selection of consultancy. The next one is quality-based selection method. What this means is that we're not going to look at the cost. We're only going to look at the best technical paper that we have, the best technical presentation we have, and then we'll use that to negotiate their financial document and then see the one that is best suited for our assignment. The third one there is the single source selection method. This is akin to what we talked about earlier in contracting, where you are looking at just one person providing that assignment, providing that consultancy service for you. For instance, you have a particular doctor or professor who is, going to speak to you on his own novel findings. You cannot compare him or ask him to put up a proposal that you would evaluate with another person. So because he's the sole proprietor of that knowledge, so we talk about single source selection. Just one person or one service provider providing the service that you know service provider to look at for the assignments you have at hand. Sometimes we look at least cost selection. For least cost selection, we're looking at assignments where if you gather 2, 3, 4, or 5 consultants, what they will do, they will be pretty much the same. You don't have much variance between what they are going to do for you. So you will now want to look at the one that provides the least cost for you. For instance, if you want to carry out audit assignment for your firm, we already have the guidelines. We know the things that's going to be done. So if you put in 3, 4, 5 audit firms, you want to pick the one that gives you value for money, that gives you the least cost, while achieving those items. So in such situations, we are looking at the least cost selection method. Sometimes you do what we call fixed budget selection. So we tell the service provider, look, this is the amount we have. We have only 15 million for this assignment. So let us know. So we have the fixed budget, and the service providers or the consultants will tell us what they can do with that. And the man that gives us best value for that fixed budget is the one we're going to negotiate with and award the contract. Sometimes you do what we call consultant qualification. You look at the qualification of that consultant before you pick the one that is best suited for you. And of course, we also have individual consultants, where you have individuals standing in like a firm to offer consultancy services to us. So these are the procurement methods for the consultancy selection method that we have. So next slide now is to go through our procurement cycle and see we have a ball that goes round, and our starting point is the planning process. Like I mentioned earlier, you start with planning. During planning, you do your needs assessment, you drop your procurement plan, you do your budgeting, you do the preparation of the bids, and for consultancy, the department in need will come up with the TOR, the terms of reference for the assignment and every other thing. For works, it's the time you prepare the in-house bill of quantity that tells us what we are looking at, what we are looking forward to. At this point, during planning, we prepare every other thing that you need to make the process successful. That's the point where you would even provide for appropriation. Ensure that you get the necessary appropriation and the necessary approvals for the assignment you want to do. All this is done under the planning segment of our procurement cycle. Once that is done, at the end of your planning process, you would have in place your procurement plan, you have in place your approved budget and approved procurement plan, you'll have your documents in place. That's the in-house preparation of documents, and even the bid documents that you are going to extend to the service providers. The provision of all these fall under planning. So once planning is done and you are ready to move on, the first thing you do is to now do request documentation. That's why you prepare your invitation to bid. Prepare your invitation to bid, prepare a solicitation document, an invitation letter, and all that. That's the second segment. And then you approach the market. Approaching market means you're extending your invitation to bid to the service providers. If it is direct contracting, you send a letter inviting the bid from that firm. And if it is competitive, you'll send to the appropriate quarters the applicable approach the market at that point. After the approach of the market, the service providers will respond with their bids, with their proposals, and every other down and evaluate what you have. The evaluation committee will be set up at that time. We have our tenders board, we have an evaluation committee, you have our procurement planning committee. I think somewhere along the line, we're going to look at some of these institutional framework for the implementation of public procurement in our various agencies. But we'll have the evaluation done after the return of bids from our various service providers. Then after the evaluation, pick the appropriate one, you apply to the public procurement agency for necessary approvals to ensure that your evaluation and indeed the entire procurement process up to that point is in tandem with the law, the procedures, and the guidelines as laid down by the agency. Once that is done and you get the appropriate approvals, you go into negotiation. contract signing and all that, so that the contractor can now move in, and you do contract management, contract setup, contract management process, and then contract closeout. Contract closeout this time includes that all necessary payments are made, necessary approvals are made. If it is items that are supplied to your store, ensure that they are well taken into the store and they are well recorded, and that the items supplied meet the quality, the quantity, and every other parameters as stated in your requisition, in your letter of requirements, and the things you had sent out earlier. In terms of works, ensure that you have appropriate completion certificates, that the job has been done according to specification and all that. So you talk about contract closeout, and funds are released and paid to the contractor or service provider as needed, and then you close out. The last segment there, the disposal segment, is to say that for us in procurement, every process that starts with planning will end with disposal. Everything you buy, at a point, you will need to dispose. And disposal itself is a procurement process. We have guides to disposal process. You don't just dispose for the sake of disposing. And there are different methods involved when you are carrying out disposal. You can dispose by returning this item, the items that you are no longer in need, to the service provider for them to give you a higher grade of it. It is a disposal method. What is key is to note that in procurement, disposal is not seen as only destructive. Disposal is not only destructive or discarding of that item. What we see as disposal goes beyond destroying the item or discarding the item. And I give an example. If you have a projector in your ministry, in your office, and you feel you want to buy a bigger one, maybe now you have smart TV in your conference room, you no longer have need for the usual projector that you were using before. Now, disposal of that item does not mean that you are just going to trash it away. One, you can dispose of it by giving it to another agency or another office of government that is still in need of such item. It is disposal from procurement point of view. That item will be knocked off your assets register and will be properly taken into the asset register of the office or the department or agency you are transferring that item to for use. As far as procurement is concerned, that is disposal. You may even also return that item to the producer for them to give you a higher level of that item, a higher, something better or something, sometimes you pay some money to get something higher. It is still disposal as far as procurement is concerned. Then, of course, you have the usual type of, say, auctioning, giving it and selling it out to those who need it, and funds that accrue to you via that process will be properly registered into the accounts of the agency as income. These are all procurement processes. I think somewhere along there, I'm not sure on this bit if we have a list of those. But what is key to note is that disposal is a procurement activity, as against what we used to have before the coming of the procurement law, what we call boarding and all that. Procurement is now in charge of disposal, along with one or two other agencies of government, especially the valuation office, because before we dispose, we must approach the valuation office for the current value of that item. So I'm not going to say because I'm the head of the department or I'm the accounting officer, I want to dispose of the vehicle I'm in use of, and I just fix a price for it on my own. Certainly, of course, I want to fix prices that will suit me. So you need to approach the Lagos State Valuation Office for our mainstream offices, but for local government, you will approach the Auditor General for Local Government's office to provide the current value, share the life value of the item before you go on to do disposal. So disposal is an item, it's a process that has its own, it's an activity that has its own process. The way you start it, the documentation, the necessary approvals from PPA, and then the closeout, and then of course, registering or recording of any funds that come in via disposal. That's the procurement cycle for us. So we'll want to now go through our flow chart for our activities. Most of the things we've been talking about will expect us to apply this, to go through this procurement flow chart for us to implement. The beginning, you see the start point there where you say that the PEs will start with their procurement planning committee. That's the PPC. The PPC, the Procurement Planning Committee. I did mention the other time that we have institutional framework for the implementation of public procurement in our various MDAs. One of them, and the first one you encounter, is the PPC, the Procurement Planning Committee. This is a committee of the procuring entity. Procuring entity means your ministry, your department, your agency, that is a standalone authority on its own and having an accounting officer. We call that set up a procuring entity. So every procuring entity would have in place a procurement planning committee. This committee consists of the accounting officer, the general manager, or the director general, whoever is the accounting officer of that department in that agency, forming the procurement planning committee. All heads of department in the agency and the accounting officer will form the procurement planning committee for the agency. This procurement plan committee will draft the procurement plan for the agency or for the entity. The procurement plan is a table that shows all the items that we are in need, that will be in need of in the forthcoming year. Procurement plans are prepared in the twilight of an outgoing year, preparing for the coming year. So the procurement plan committee will put that up. The procurement plan will show those items that we need, the planned amount that we want to use in procuring that service or that assignment, or the goods or the works assignment. It will also show the time we'll need it, the time we'll need these items, the method to be applied, and all such other things. So we have that in our procurement plan. We expect the procurement plan to be the basis for our budget. Now, there's a back and forth process at this point, and I need to explain it because we always have issues of which one comes first, the budget or the procurement plan. We look at it this way. The only way you can budget for an item is that you had agreed that you have that item. I give a typical example. Say I'm the head of admin in my ministry, and I have it at the back of my mind that we want to buy 15 more chairs for our conference room. That's my desire. But when I get to the procurement plan committee meeting, where every stakeholder of the agency sits to agree to what all of us will do, we may have ideas that say, look, head of A&HR, we see the fact that we need 15, but for paucity of fund, let's buy only 5 and repair the others. That's an example. Or some may even say, why are you buying only 15? Why not just buy 30? At the end of the day, the decision of the procurement plan committee becomes the decision of the entire ministry or office. What we've all agreed to do. We now amend by adding, subtracting, or whatever, amending the desires or the plans of all those of us that come up with items for the procurement plan. You'll agree with me that it is only after we all agree on what to do and what not to do, which is what the procurement plan will be telling us, that we can have a viable budget. Because what the budget will now be, the budget estimate will be, is that they will now put figures, even during our procurement plan, we're also looking at in-house estimate for these items. The budget will now collate these items to our estimated budget. But if you feel that you want to start from the point of budget first, where you have the figures there, by the time you now sit down to start interrogating the content of the budget, you find out that you may need to change some of the things you have in the budget. So we'll prefer the procurement plan, the procurement law rather, prefers that we start from the procurement plan, which will be the basis for your budget. After preparing the draft budget, of course, all necessary budget approval process, and then you'll have what will be our approved budget. A lot of times, the approved budget may not be the same as our estimated budget, which means it may not be in tandem with our draft procurement plan. So what we do in such situation is to go back and amend our draft procurement plan to suit the approved budget, such that at the point we will now have an approved budget and an approved procurement plan that will be in tandem. In tandem in saying that there shouldn't be any item in the procurement plan that is not represented in the budget. And there shouldn't be any fund in the procurement, in the budget, that does not have a plan, does not have the process in the procurement plan towards achieving or spending that fund. So the two of them will now be seismic twins. The two of them will run concurrently. Everything you have in your budget, in your approved budget, will be what you have in your approved procurement plan. So once you have that, you go on to initiate memos from the user departments to carry out your activities. Now, you see an arrow going back, saying that in situations where you want to carry out activities where you don't have approvals for it, you don't have VOC in your budget for that. That's what I mentioned earlier, that we have provisions for emergency activities, for activities that we are not initially provided for in our procurement plan or even in our budget. So when you go acquire such approvals for such activities, you go back, put them back into, get them contained in your approved budget, amend also your procurement plan, and have a plan to achieve that item. So you must always have everything that you want to do contained in your budget and your procurement plan. Then you go on to do other activities where you start with the memos you initiate memo from your user department on what you want to do. These memos will go to the accounting officer, get the necessary accounting officer's approval, and then the head of department and all that will go on and start from the PTB or the MTB of your entity on what you want to do. And the process, you prepare your big document and do everything like we have said earlier, then you develop the strategy for the implementation of that assignment, and then you issue these documents to your service providers. That's the point you'll say that you're going through the tendering. You're either issuing out the RFQ, the request for quotation, the request for information, or the request for proposal that you issue out to your service providers. These service providers will attend to these requests, return their document, and then you go into evaluation by your evaluation committee. Excuse me. After the evaluation by the evaluation committee, the tenders board, the ministerial tenders board, or the personal tenders board will also need to approve your evaluation before you approach the PPA. Because the tenders board is the decision-making body for your entity, your procuring entity. So that's the second time the tenders board is sitting on that assignment. The first time they are sitting is before the commencement of the procurement process, where you tell them that you now have the accounting officer's approval. You tell them your process, the program you have on the method you want to apply and every other thing. Then you get the approval and go on to the issuance of those documents. After the service providers would have returned their bids, you do the evaluation. That's the evaluation committee will sit and then return to the tenders board. I also need to note that the evaluation committee is a subcommittee of the tenders board. And then we have variance in the constitution of the evaluation committee. Every process will have its own evaluation committee, because the constitution of the evaluation committee is the user department will be there, the man in need of the assignment, the procurement will be there, and then you'll have a subject matter expert, being someone who understands the process of the item that you are in need of to assist during evaluation. So you may not have the evaluation committee for one assignment being able to evaluate another assignment, because you may have the user department changing or the subject matter expert changing. But in whichever situation you find ourselves, after the evaluation by the evaluation committee, the tenders board will sit to agree to the decisions of the evaluation committee before you now approach the PPA for approval. If a chance the PPA has one or two issues or considerations on your report as presented, you can go back. That's why that no, if you're not able to achieve or obtain the PPA's approval, you go back to your tenders board to review whatever the procurement agency had requested for. And once that is properly done, then you have a yes and move on to obtain the approval of Mr. Governor. Now, we also have a consideration, which is saying that sometimes we have the process, we say process before approval, that's process before the governor's approval, or sometimes we have approval before process. What I've just gone through now is where you have process before approval. So after the evaluation and all that and the PPA's approval, you may now have a document that says you've agreed to construct a new block of flats or a new block of classrooms at a certain place for 350 million naira. That's the final figure. And then you go for governor's approval for it. Once you get the governor's approval at that level, the next thing we do will be to go for the award and all that. But in some situations, we may have approval before process. So if you have governor's approval before process, then you are going back through that line that says no. That means you are just going back right through to the AO to now commence your process. I hope that's clear. If you have governor's approval and you're starting from governor's approval, then you go back to where you have AO to commence the entire procurement process. Or you would have done the entire procurement process and then get the governor's approval and move on to award. So you can either have process before approval or award or approval before process. In whichever form it comes, there must be appropriate procurement process for what you're doing. Then after the award letter is given, you register the award with the PPA and do all such other necessary documentation. You go on to project implementation. Sometimes you need to request for advance payment guarantee from your contractor. Sometimes you may not need to request. Now, I need to state that advance payment guarantee is only required when the contractor requests for advance payment. And anytime we are releasing funds, government funds, to any service provider before the implementation of the desired service, the service provider must provide appropriate payment guarantee, appropriate payment guarantee must be provided by that service provider. Now, when we say advance payment guarantee or advance payment bond, two of them are saying the same thing. The bond comes from insurance firms. The guarantee comes from the banks, other institutions, but they are still speaking to the same purpose. They are just guaranteeing that government funds to be released to this service provider will be duly expended as desired. And once anything goes wrong, the government can go to that firm, be it the bond from the insurance firm or the guarantee from the bank, to recoup government fund that has been released to that firm as advance payment. That's what APG is all about. So after that, we'll go on to the construction or the delivery of the item as you need it. The head of the account, once we are sure that either the items have been provided or you carry out necessary valuation for works, and we've ascertained that the firm is due for payment, you raise vouchers, internal audit activities will be done, then the CIA will come in and all that for funds to be released through the STO and all that down the line. So this is our typical procurement flow chart for every agency in Lagos State. This way, we are sure that government funds will be expended via or after proper procurement process. Now, this is the flow chart for first line charge agencies. Before now, what the feeling that some of us have is that, oh, I'm a first line charge agency. The money is with me already. It's been released to me on 1/12 as it's done. So since I have my money with me, what other procurement process do money and go on and acquire what you want? That will not be right. The procurement law will not allow that. So this is a flow chart for first line charge agencies. You also still start with your procurement plan. You do your budget estimate. This is in fact what will give rise to your expected monthly releases that you get as first line charge. So because you've started with your procurement and with your budget, which is based on the procurement plan, the procurement plan should tell us what you want to do, when you want to do it, what's the estimate for it and all that, which means that there should still be a process for you to achieve those expenditure lines that you have there. So at no time would we say that because our office is a first line agency that we will not have to implement, we expend our funds. Then, of course, after the approval of the the procurement plan by your agency, by your office, you also take it to the procurement plan during our procurement plan clinic for necessary approvals and all that. Now, for first line charge agencies, we expect you to have the qualifications of the contractors you want to use. And your contractors have to be registered. You will engage them via our e-procurement portal. That means that your procurement officers will still extend bid documents to the service providers via our e-procurement portal. What we see a lot of time is that because the fund is available, we just get funds released to certain contractors or certain service providers to do certain things for us. That is not right. And that's why when our team go around to do evaluation work, monitoring and evaluation work, the MEC department will have a lot of problems, and we have a lot of our first line charge agencies or offices being marked down by our evaluation MEC department when we go around to look at activities that we've carried out. You must ensure that we spend government funds after proper procurement process. And these things, the interaction with our procurement, with our service providers, will still have to be done on our e-procurement portal. As we speak, we have about 169 agencies of government on our e-procurement portal. Very, very few agencies are left to be on that portal for us. So we expect everyone's activity to be run through the procurement portal. And of course, every other thing needs to be done. Like we had mentioned earlier, we still need to be done. You write memo to your AO, you do all the processes. The only difference is that you are not going to, you're not going outside the agency for release of funds. So after your PTB clearance and the award and the necessary documentation and registering of the award with procurement, you just go straight to your accounts department, your F&A department for release of funds and every other thing. You are not going to CIA and STO for release of funds. But of course, the audit department, the audit office in your agency will still do the necessary prepayment activities and every other thing that needs to be done. So that's it for the first line charge agencies. So the workflow for the finance and accounts and procurements, this interaction between the finance and accounts department, procurement department, and the audit department of our various offices where we come in, where we interact, after having to ensure that proper procurement is done. So what do we do? What is procurement expecting from us? Procurement is saying that individual talents get magnified many times over through the collective lens of an effective team. So procurement is encouraging or encourages collaboration amongst every one of us. We have to cooperate with ourselves, we join forces and pull resources together, we partner ourselves and work together, sharing understanding. There is no Superman in governance. Procurement is not standing as I'm above everybody and or seeing anybody underneath or above it. It is joint collaboration. Everyone plays his own part collectively to ensure the same goal. That's the way procurement sees our process. In conclusion, we have to be transparent in everything we do. We think ahead before we start. There has to be a plan. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. There has to be a plan. You think ahead and be transparent with whatever you do and remain auditable. Remain auditable. Know that anything you do today, from the procurement point of view, you can still be called back to explain it 10 years from now. In fact, it's something I've witnessed. We were at the Lagos State House of Assembly at the time, a few years back, when one of our retired engineers was called back to come and explain certain decisions he took on one of our projects. And I think the engineer had left 3 years before the time he was called back to come and explain certain decisions he took. So we should ensure that we do proper documentation and everything is done auditably, clear accountability, and creating opportunity for everybody to be part of the system and you carry everyone along in doing everything. And need I say that what I tell or what the agency tells the procurement officers all the time is that the number one assignment of the procurement officer is to protect the accounting officer, that's the permanent secretaries, the director generals, and all that, because they are responsible for all we do. Whether we do it right or wrong, the accounting officer is responsible. So it's the place of the procurement officer to ensure that you protect the accounting officer, give them the best of advice, give them the best of opinion on what is right by law, what is right by the process and the procedures and guidelines of public procurement. And we also expect our accounting officers to be magnanimous enough and have the listening ears to our procurement officers to follow advice, listen to advice, consider the advice and see how we go. A lot of times we have some of our accounting officers who will say that I'm the accounting officer, I take my decisions myself, but it's just that sometimes when the chips are down, it goes beyond what we think it is. So procurement expects that the best of advice should be given to our accounting officers. The accounting officers should on their own understand decisions that have been taken and be sure that the best decision is taken in the interest of the state, in the interest of your office, and be ready to account for all that has been done. That's why we say that the accounting officers. So this is about what I have concerning the process for us. But in a while, I'll just want to run through another thing, that's the groceries uh, of terms for procurement that I expect our uh, right. So just a minute. All right. So can you see this? Mr. Jami, can you see this?
Yes, sir.
120 terminologies. Okay.
All
So
right,
this
sir.
will I'll just run through this. I don't know if along the line we have anyone that you will need explanation, just note it down. During the question and answer session, we'll look at them. So this just to introduce us to some of the terms that you'll meet in procurement. You know, procurement, we've just defined as the structured process of acquiring goods, works, and services using public funds under regulated procedure. You know the PPA, the Public Procurement Agency. You know what we call the procuring entity. That's any ministry, department, or agencies or public institution responsible for initiating and executing procurement. That's what we call procuring entity. Of course, we know our accounting officers. The head of any procuring entity is called the accounting officer. We know what due process is all about. Bid, a formal offer submitted by a contractor, a supplier, or a consultant to provide goods, works, or services for us. That's what is called a bid. And then an individual or a company that submits a bid is called a bidder. That's what we have there. A tender is a formal submission of a bid outlining the technical capabilities and financial offers of that firm. That's a tender. And the tender document is the official set of documents containing the specifications, the instructions, and the criteria for bidders. That's the tender document. That's the one that the procuring entity will issue to our service providers. Expression of interest. That's a document submitted by consultants or firms expressing their willingness to participate in our consultancy service. So before this, we would have issued what we call REOI, the request for expression of interest. So the office, the procurement entity, will issue REOI, that's request for expression of interest. Then the consultants will return EOI, they will return the expression of interest. They will also along the line they can also return their request for proposal. Now, between the expression of interest and request for proposal, at the beginning, you're looking at the expression of interest, telling us what you want to do. By the time we conclude and I have a clear terms of reference of what you want to do, once we issue that, we'll be issuing the request for proposal, and the service provider will now return their proposal. In some cases, we may not start from the point of REOI. Once we are sure of what we want to do, we may start only from the point of RFP, request for proposal. But there are times we need to start from REOI, and that will still take us to the point where we will issue the RFP, that's the request for proposal. That's the document that clearly states the technical and financial proposal from the consultant. The request for quotation, this could be for works, could be for goods, and all that. Then the invitation to bid is what you publish in that's a public solicitation inviting bidders to participate in our open competitive procurement process. We also have standard bidding document or standard procurement document. That's what we have prepared, developed by the PPA that tells us it consists of It's a template developed by PPA for consistency and ensuring that everything that needs to be communicated to our service provider is contained and we don't leave out any item. That's the standard bidding document. And when you pick up a standard bidding document, you will now amend it to the particular assignment you have at hand, and you now have a bidding document. The one we have prepared by the agency is the standard bidding document. But to use it, you adopt it, put the necessary information and necessary information and what you have and data in it to now suit a specific procurement process. Once that is done, you now have a bid or a bidding document, a procurement document. It is no longer a standard bidding document once you have all that done to the document. I see a hand is up, but I think what we want to do is to run through this and take all questions later, please. So we also have bid security I mentioned briefly a while ago. Bid security is the guarantee either from a bond or a bank draft that is submitted by the bidder to our firm to ensure that you will not withdraw from the process while it's on. So we have bid security, we have performance security, we have advance payment security. Now, the bid security is the one that the service provider will submit along with his bid when he's submitting his bid. And the essence of that is to say that I'm staying with you in this procurement process. We don't want anybody, service providers who are not serious submitting bid for our processing, and by the time we evaluate and call them and they say, no, we are no longer interested. When they do that, they will lose their bid security. The bid security is to guarantee us that the bidder will not withdraw from the process until award is made. Performance guarantee, this one runs end to end. It's saying that the contractor will perform on the contract as awarded. This will be provided after the award of contract. At the point when the contractor is moving to site and advance payment is being released if needed, even if it's not needed, the law requires that for any expenditure for 250 million and above, performance guarantee or performance bond must be submitted by the service provider. Mobilization fee or advance payment, of course, we know what that is. You may or may not, make that available, or even some of our service providers or contractors may not. Even if you make it available, they may decide. If they do, then they will submit an advance payment guarantee for it. Bid validity is a period which we are not going to make it open-handed. It means that when you give you a particular award, bid opening is a public event where you open the bid and ensure that you see what everyone has submitted, you document it and all that. Bid closing date, of course, we have dates. Once our bids come out, to tell them that between Monday 15th of June and so day 30th of June, you have the opportunity of submitting bid. Once the bid closes, no longer receive bids from our suppliers or from our service providers, and then immediately we have our bids close. We'll also have the bid opening session. We have the evaluation committee. That's a committee, a selection of professionals that are mandated to assess the bid submitted on, based on defined criteria that is there. We have the technical evaluation and the financial evaluation. We have a responsive bid. A responsive bid is a bid that meets all requirements of the solicitation document without deviation. Once there's a deviation, your bid is no longer a responsive bid. Then we also have what we call the lowest evaluated responsive bid, which means that's the bid that offers the most favorable price among those that meet the technical and commercial requirements. So of all the responsive bids, the one that offers the most favorable price becomes the lowest evaluated responsive bid. Sometimes we have other terminologies like meat and every other thing. Now we look at a sustainable bits and all that. Like this is the basis where we are starting from. We also have our contract award. This is a formal decision selecting the winner, the winning bidder, and granting contract rights. We have a certificate of no objection. That's a document that you obtain from PPA authorizing an entity to go on to the next stage in the procurement process or to award a contract. That's what we call the certificate of no objection. We have a procurement plan. I mentioned that a while ago. That's a schedule outlining all procurement activities that a procuring entity intends to undertake in a physical year. So this usually we do it, we prepare it in the twilight of an outgoing year, preparatory to a coming year. And it details all necessary procurement procedures, their method, their financial implications, and other critical variables of all expenditure lines. We have threshold. Threshold is monetary limits that determine the level of approval requirements for procurement action. Open competitive bid, know that what that is. Restrictive bidding, two-stage bidding, direct procurement, emergency procurement, consultancy services, goods work services. These are all normal things that we've come across, and there are definitions. I'm sure we have access to this to have proper, brush through if you need it. Then framework agreement. A framework agreement is a long-term agreement that you have with the supplier. Repeated purchases under a defined period. So we can have a framework agreement with a firm for our stationery items for say 1 or 2 years. Once we have a predetermined, for anything that we do repeated purchase within a period defined, we can have framework agreement so that we don't have to repeat procurement process each time we need that item. We just have the framework agreement that tells us that for the next 2 years, we'll be procuring this item from this particular service provider and all that. We have a different procurement methods. We have a post-qualification activity. What we call post-qualification is to say that evaluation conducted to confirm that the selected bidder possesses necessary capacity. That's what we call post-qualification. So we say that, service providers will give you all forms of promises and documents. You say that I'm the one that built the national stadium at Abuja and all that during your evaluation. Some of all these things you may not be able to ascertain and confirm during the evaluation. But for those selected for the award, the agency or the procuring entity now has the opportunity to go and confirm all the claims made by the selected, now not all those that are bidding, the selected service provider. You have the opportunity of confirming all their claims before you finally award the contract. That's what post-qualification is all about. Pre-qualification is the initial screening of firms to determine if they meet required standards for the bidding. So sometimes they have what we call two-stage bidding, where we'll pre-qualify and say, okay, we are separating the boys from the men, and then we know standard requirements before we now issue out our bid document. You can have contract negotiation, you can have contract signing, you have contract performance, what it means, contract variation, misprocurement, any procurement undertaken contrary to the law of the process is a misprocurement process. That's what it's all about. Prior review. A prior review is an evaluation of the conditions by the PPA prior to the finalization of your procurement process. So we can have prior review of your process before we give you the no objection to go ahead and do whatever you want to do. They have post review. Post review is a review conducted by PPA after contract award to ensure compliance. These are the procurement entities also conduct their own post review sometimes to confirm claims made by their bidder. So post-review can be done by either PPA or by the procuring entity. We have a procurement audit process, which is a systemic review of procurement procedure to assess legality and efficiency of what we've done. We keep our procurement records, we have our annual procurement report, we have our procurement fraud, we have conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is a situation where personal interest interferes with professional procurement decisions. So this is something that is very, very key. And we have to be sure, we have to ensure that we don't allow conflict of interest to tint our evaluation process. If you have reasons that someone, one of the service provider, you have interest or is a known person to you, you declare your conflict of interest before you commence evaluation. Transparency, accountability, value for money, cost-benefit analysis, needs assessment, market survey, price intelligence unit. All these are terms that you can go through and see what they mean from the procurement point of view. There are actually about 120 of them, but I see that we've been on this call for quite a while, and I would not want to it's already lengthy. I don't want to overbore us going through every one of it. So at this point, I'll want to stop here and then take contributions from participants and questions and whatever we have to do. So thank you so much for listening. Hello, sir, Mr. Jamu.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm with you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your input, sir. So, if you have any question, just raise your hand so that we can call it a day and prepare for the next class. Meanwhile, I'm assure you that we are going to share the slide and the other word formats with you on our WhatsApp group. So immediately after this class. So please, your hand for the question so that we can quickly
hands are up already.
round up. I know, sir. Thank you, sir. Ogunlewe, you have the floor. Ogunlewe.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so very much. Firstly, let me appreciate Mr. Engineer Suba for this impactful time. Indeed, I've been really blessed by this. God will continue to strengthen you. And also, I want to thank the management organizer of this knowledge hub. Thank you for this time. So, my question is simple. I was going through some write-ups on the procurement process. I encountered this word, margin of preference, when it comes to procurement process. So maybe you could we discussed it yesterday, but I was hoping you can just get a better clarification coming from you. Margin of preference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we have a second one too, so that we'll take them together?
At the beginning. Do you want to answer that or we should proceed?
No, let's take questions. Take all of them together.
Okay, all right.
Join. Stop listening to me. If it comes in the middle, you don't pronounce I in the middle. Zara, are you listening? You don't pronounce I in the middle. You join if it comes in the middle. But if it's at the beginning of the word, you would pronounce your al.
Okay, Falade Hidayat, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I want to say thank you to the organizers of this event and thank you to our lecturer too. The question I want to ask is, government property that needs to be auctioned, is it part of disposal in the procurement process, and also the ones that are stolen? can it be part of disposal in the procurement process? Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Idowu Oluyemi, Alaga, quick one, please.
Yes, good evening. I want to say a big thank you to Engineer Subar for this wonderful presentation. I benefited a whole lot, and also to appreciate the Knowledge Hub. You're doing a good job. So my question is has to do with bit security, sir. I just want to know, is it in the form of money? Is it monetary? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Alaga. Noted. Now we call on Modupe Babatunde. You have the floor.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Our facilitator. Yes, sir. I want to know much about the e-procurement because we discovered that there is some challenges that we face in this e-procurement. I know that it's the same thing as P2P, if I might understand your lecture. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Babatunde.
Can we take one more so that we'll take 5 questions? And
Okay, so that's what I
take
have to
them
do. Okay. Omojua, Fred, have the floor.
Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Facilitator. God bless you. We really appreciate your effort and your
in.
Mr. Omojua, we can't hear you, Mr. Fred.
contract should be given to highest bidder.
Can you
Contract should be
recap your
awarded to
question?
highest bidder and the lowest bidder. Okay, sir. I saw in one of the past questions, sir, they say contract should be awarded to the highest bidder and to the highest bidder. I don't know the difference between the meaning, the highest bidder and the lowest bidder. Why is it given to the highest bidder? Why is it given to the lowest bidder? I just want to know the difference between the two, sir. God bless you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll start from your question so that I'll just take it from the last time.
Yes.
Now, in procurement,
Yes, sir.
part of the thing you'll see in this document, the Word document, we talked, okay, in fact, the page you're seeing now, number 121 is speaking to most economically advantageous bid. This is a higher level of procurement. This is the best value based on quality, price, and other criteria. So that's what we're talking about, economically advantageous tender, meet. But much earlier, I talked about lowest evaluated bid, which is a common thing we'll talk about. So when you have bidders coming, you want to buy a particular item for your office. One firm is saying that he's going to sell it to you at 350,000. Another person says, one says 350,000, another person says 375, another person says 315, and all that. So even out of these three, 375, 315, and 350, the highest is 375. The lowest is 315. So we are saying that the lowest evaluated, which is 315, is the one you are picking. Because there's no point I'm paying somebody 375 when I can get it 315 or even 350 from some other suppliers. So the word we use is the lowest evaluated price. In this case, 315 for supply. When you pick the highest is when you are disposing. If you want to dispose one of our old buses, we take it through one of the old buses of your office. I will take it through open competitive bid process. Somebody says, I'm ready to buy it at 350,000 naira. And that person says, I'm ready to buy at 370,000. And that person says 315,000 naira. Because this one now is funds coming into your firm, into your office, into your entity, you will pick the highest, which is 375. Because what you want to sell, somebody is ready to, somebody wants to pay you 315, and that person wants to pay you 350, and the third guy is ready to pay you 375. Certainly, the more economical one for you, the more profitable one for you is to pick the highest, which is 375. That's what you are disposing. But when you are procuring, you are picking the list, which is 315. I hope that clears that question as to the highest or the lowest bidder and all that. When you are procuring, you take the lowest bidder. When you are disposing, you take the highest bidder. That's that. Now, for the question on our e-procurement portal and P2P, our e-procurement portal is not exactly the same thing as the P2P. The P2P is under the STO office, although the work it's doing is also synonymous with what we're doing with our e-procurement. But P2P is saying that they are capturing the entire procurement process. P2P, procure to pay. That's what that is all about. But our e-procurement portal in the agency, the one I just told you, we already have 169 of our entities in Lagos State on. That's a platform that allows the agency to interact with your various ministries, and your ministries also to interact with service providers. That's what that platform is all about. We have a module in it that allows our service providers to register, and the agency manages our contractors on that module. We have the module that we use for solicitation and every other thing. So basically, our e-procurement platform is a platform that allows interactions between the public procurement agency, the various entities of government, and our service providers who are registered to do business with us. So any and every agency or service provider that wants to do business with any of our agencies in Lagos State must be registered on our e-procurement platform, because that's the only way you can interact with our ministries, departments, and agencies, and also interact with the Lagos State Public Procurement Agency. And it's also through that platform that the agency will be able to interact with the various procuring entities on their needs. On bid security, whether it's monetary or not. Now, bid security is a document. All the security documents that we speak to, the bid security, the advance payment guarantee or advance payment security, the performance security, and every other thing. They are all documents issued by financial institutions telling us that they are guaranteeing the entity, the procuring, the service provider. The service provider would approach the financial institution, whether it's the bank or the insurance firm. They will approach them to request for the bid security. Between them, they know the collateral they will put down for the financial institution to issue the security. It is the security issued to the service provider by the financial institution that the service providers will provide or will submit to the procuring entity, such that if we have challenges with the service provider, then we'll call that document. So it's not a monetary value that they will deposit with us. No, it's a document they will obtain from the financial institution. Right. The financial institution would have had their own collateral, which could sometimes be monetary or sometimes some other assets that they will use to obtain the bid security. The next question has to do with disposal, government properties, and all that. Now, in fact, there's this thing we'll say, there's this adage in procurement that everything we procure, we can dispose. Everything will procure, will dispose. Everything that goes through procurement for government can be disposed. So disposal is when you are changing the use or the ownership of that item, whether it's government building, government vehicle, government whatever. Once you are changing its need or discarding its need or changing its ownership, we talk about disposal. That's what disposal is. I hope that clears it. If you are not yet clear, you can ask questions. Now, margin of preference. As the name goes, we set our standards, we set our criteria, we say that this is what we want. The margin of preference is now saying that if you are not hitting the bull eye, we can allow you this much. Anything beyond that, we can't do. That's how margin of preference works. So we are allowing you variance, so to say, from the points we have stated. That's the margin of preference. That's the way it works. In evaluation and picking your preferred service provider, you can allow preference. I hope I've taken care of these questions. But if you still need further clarification, you can let me know if you have other questions.
All right. So if you are not see one more on that, you can see raise your hand. So I will call on Mr. Sojinu now. Mr. Sojinu, you are on the floor, sir. You have the floor, sir. Mr. Sojinu, sir. Sorry. You have the floor, sir. Doctor.
Doctor, yeah.
Doctor, you have the floor.
Engineer Zubair, it's nice hearing your voice.
My brother, how are you?
I think I should add professor to your title. Yeah, professor of procurement. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, my brother.
For taking us through this very, very beautiful presentation. I joined a bit late, so my question is, I would like to know the various deductions that are being done based on procurement requirements, either on goods or services or works. You know, they say procurement has deducted this, we need to deduct it for procurement and all that. So I would like to know, I don't know if I missed it at the beginning because I didn't join at the beginning. So thank you very much, sir. Deductions in terms of when we get the budget, of course, it doesn't come back as a whole eventually after passing through the procurement process. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. We'll attend to it.
Okay, sir, Mr. Doctor. Okay, Akonji, you have the floor. Akonji, you have the floor.
No, ma'am.
Akonji, okay.
No, ma'am.
Akonji, are you there? Okay, sir, maybe you can proceed.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
thank you.
Hold on, sir. Let me call on Tayo. Okay, Tayo, you have the floor. Tayo Badru.
Yes, ma'am.
Tayo Badru, you have the floor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, proceed, sir.
So, the question asked by Dr. Sojini. If you have, let's make it practical. I want to buy a phone, iPhone 17. If you go to slot, the phone goes for, just for this purpose, 200,000 naira, right? If you buy the phone from slot, it goes for 200,000. That is the working price. That's the price tag on it. But you know that if I'm going to get a service provider, a supplier to bring that phone for us, it's not going to give us at 200,000. It's probably going to give us at 250,000 naira. The question is why that 50,000 naira on it? And this 50,000 will do the following jobs. The reason why he put that: number one, as a service provider, he has registered with PPA. So he's going to find a way to recoup his registration fee. Number two, he's not collecting the money straight. Unlike when slots, you walk into slots, you pay immediately before you walk out with the phone. This man is going to get paid at least few days, if not weeks later. So he's looking at time value of money. Number three, he's looking at his own profit. Number four, there are some deductions that will be made when payments are made by, between the accounts department and ST and all. They talk about VAT, they talk about withholding tax, they talk about development levy. Now, of all these deductions, the only one that is accruable to or that is due to be paid by government is VAT. The VAT on every assignment is to be paid by the state government, because we say it's the man that enjoys the service that pays the VAT. But every other deduction is to be paid by the service provider. So ahead of time, the man is aware that he's going to pay a certain amount called development levy. There's even going to be stamp duty and all those kind of things. So he wants to be sure that at the time he finishes paying all these deductions, he will still have that 200,000 at least, so that he's not making a loss. That's the essence of that 50,000 that he has put on the 200,000. So when payments are to be made by STO or by your account when they are preparing voucher, they will deduct VAT. That VAT is even easier. It's an in and out thing. In and out in the sense that some of what you want to pay for, you now say add VAT. You understand? So after, even whether it's works or you are buying items or doing any service, after your final initial cost, you now say add VAT, which means we are aware that after all these things, government is adding VAT because we are going to pay it. So it's an in and out thing. So that one is usually not even a problem. But then after the deduction of VAT, they will now deduct withholding tax and then deduct development levy, stamp duty. Those are the deductions that are made. What is left is what the service provider now gets, his own funds. Now, but if there are other deductions that they make, because you said that when funds come to you, they say that they've done procurement process, and this is what is left for you. The reason we have it presented that way is that sometimes when we are not having proper procurement process and they say, okay, funds have been released, non-procurable assignments, and funds have been released to your office, such deductions will have been made before funds are released to you. So what is released to you is fund that you can now use to do that assignment directly. So that is what is now coming to you, which is the 200,000. Like, because in your budget, you had 250,000, which caters for the item and all those deductibles. But once the fund is now released to you as a non-procurable expense and is written in PS check, they would have done deductions of all these other items that we just mentioned, so that you are having what you can only use for the expenses at hand. So, Doctor, I hope that is clear enough. Hello, Doctor.
Yes, I think Doctor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think Doctor is okay with that, sir.
All right.
Tayo Badru, are you ready now? You have the floor. Tayo Badru.
Yes, please. Please,
Yes.
thank
Okay.
you for the wonderful presentation.
Okay. Yeah.
Please, I'd like to know who are the first line ministry that you've been referring to.
All right. Okay, so I think about 12 of them. Lagos State Internal Revenue is one of them. The PPA is one of them. House of Assembly Commission, a couple of agencies like that. There are about 12 of NDAs that are top-line. LRS, PPA, Lagos State House of Assembly, and a couple of them like that. I don't know the list now, but there are about 12 of them. What it means is that they don't get their own budget is given to them assured, divided by 12, and they do their own processes in out. All right, go on, sir. Mr. Gamu. The convener.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you still with us, sir?
I'm with you. I'm with you. Any other questions?
Okay, Mr. Fesomu, you have the floor, sir.
He's still muted, though. Mr. Fesomu is still muted.
Yeah, thank you, Engineer Subawa Alaji. I want to ask a question. Before giving letter of award,
yes,
you'll be given notification of award.
Yes.
Before you get that letter of award,
yeah,
the contractor, they will have to pay administrative fees, legal agreements, stamp duty, and compulsory levy. At what percentage is the administrative fee for any contract above or below 100 million, or for all legal agreements? So there are certain fees you have to pay before you can get the letter of award, after you have been given notification of award.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So the process is this. Sorry, excuse me, please. At the completion of our evaluation process and the determination of the beneficiary of the process, a letter of notification of award will be released or be issued to the service provider, telling the service provider that he has been that he's successful in the process. I will tell him the amount. If he's been chosen to supply 3 pieces of iPhone 17 to our office at the price of 250,000 naira each, which is 750,000 naira. Then you'll be advised to go make certain payments. That's to make the payment for admin fee and agreement fee. Now, they're also being asked to pay the stamp duty at this point. The admin fee and agreement fee. The admin fee is a standing amount. That one does not change. 0.25% of your contract price. That's the agreement fee. Sorry, the admin fee. The agreement fee is the one that is a bit proportional. From 0 to 200 million, you will pay 0.25. Sorry, 0.5. 0.5 for awards 0 to 200 million. But from 200 million and above, you will now pay 0.25. The reason is very obvious. The more the money, you will want to reduce the rate so that you don't pay an amount that is too heavy. But what is important is that all these figures will be clearly stated, both in amount and in figure, in the award notification letter. It is only when these funds are paid, these amounts are paid, and you have evidence of payment that the final award letter will be released to the service provider. And every other place that the award letter will go to. You know, the award letter, one will stay with PPA, one will stay with the procuring entity, one will go to MOJ for the preparation of contract, and you give one to the beneficiary himself. But it's only when you provide evidence of this payment that the final award letter will be made available to you. Is that okay, sir? Hello, sir.
Okay. Mr. Betomu, if you still have question, you can raise your hand. So quickly, let me go to Falade Idayat. Falade, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, sir. I was the one that asked the question about the disposal in procurement. I also asked that time that how do procurement treat stolen government properties? That was not answered.
Solely government property.
Stolen. Yes.
Stolen, no, sorry. Stolen government property.
Yes.
If a government property is stolen, the onus is on whoever is in charge of that property to prove to the entity that that item has been stolen, such that it can be knocked off from the register of the entity. Stolen item is not a procuring activity. That an item has been stolen is not essentially a procurement thing. Where procurement comes in is for the documentation. So if you bought a new car for one of the heads of department, and then somewhere along the line, the vehicle is stolen, where procurement comes in is in the documentation of your assets, so that we want to know that it's no longer with you. So whatever process with the police, with wherever, that will show, that will evidence that that item has been stolen, that's what we need. That the act of stealing is not a procurement responsibility. But it's just for us in procurement to properly document once it has been proven. So you won't tell procurement that this item has been stolen, then procurement will just write it has been stolen. You would need appropriate documentation. I want to be careful with my words. Appropriate documentation that that item has been stolen. That's what procurement will now rely on in his own documentation. So if it's something that you need to get to the police station to get whatever or whichever way, and once that is done, then procurement will register it or record it as that item having been stolen. But it's quite different from disposal. A stolen item is not a disposed item. Disposal is different from, lost item or stolen items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So quick one, Longe Folake, you have the floor. Longe.
Yes, if I have a disused school furniture, how do I dispose it following procurement procedure?
All right, so the first thing you'll do as the head of department in charge of that item is to write to your accounting officer, listing those items and your intention to dispose of them. Just like when you wanted to buy those items, you wrote to your accounting officer, and if he agrees that yes, we can dispose of them, then you commence the disposal process. The first thing you'll do will be to write to the valuation office if you're in the mainstream, or go to the office of the general for local government if you're from the local government. So they will give you the value of those items, those school chairs or furniture or whatever you want to dispose. As bad as they are, they will still tell you that, okay, we can sell them more for 10 naira. I can sell them more for 5 naira. I can sell them more for 1,000. Now, with that price, you will now approach the PPA and say, this is the reserve price as presented by the valuation office. And this is my disposal strategy. Disposal strategy meaning that do you want to dispose by public auction? Do you want to trade in? Do you want to give it a seat and all that? Whatever disposal strategy you now present to, and the expected reserve price on it, the agency will not give you go ahead or tell you what they agree for you to do. You go on, implement that, get all accrued funds properly taken into your accounts, and then come back to PPA for no objection, showing us that you've done all you promised to do and everything is in tandem. They will give you a certificate of compliance, and that ends the process. Hello, Ma, is that okay?
Mrs. Longe, are you okay with that? You can raise your hand up again if you need additional clarification. Okay, I think we are all good to go now. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's Olubusola Olatunji. You have the floor.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much. I've seen a situation whereby a department in a procurement entity purchase an item and then after a while doesn't want to use it anymore and then wants to dispose, and it's still in a good order. And then another department of that same entity takes over that this thing. Does it have to go through a procurement process or something, disposal process, for it to show that it has left its own hand and it's another department, even if it's still within the same entity? Thank you.
All right, so if the item is still within the same entity, it may not be seen as disposal that will come to the agency, because it means that the same accounting officer, the same procurement, the same tenders board, and every other thing is still managing that item. So it's like you want for what do you call it now, microscope for a department. There are 3 departments that use microscope in your entity. You've got 4 for department A. Along the line, you find out that 2 is enough and you want to give out the other 2 to the other departments. That will not necessarily mean coming to PPA and doing all that process, because it is still within the records of your entity. It is within the asset register of your entity that you are going to manage that. But when you are now moving it from that entity to another entity, it becomes a disposal from your entity. You can't dispose from department A to department B. It's just a movement within your entity. But you can dispose from entity A to entity B, from ministry A to ministry, because you are now looking at a different chart of account, a different accounting document. A different person is responsible. A different person is now having addition to his assets. Then when you are moving from one department to another department, it's still the assets of the same entity. So you will not need the entire gamut of procurement process when you are moving within the same entity from one department to another department.
Okay, thank you. Said Sikirat, you have the floor.
Good evening, sir. Well done for good job that you are doing. So we sincerely appreciate you. I want to confirm or affirm what you explained the other time, that through the in the procurement process, that we can do the procurement process up to PPA level and get maybe certificate of no objection, then before getting Mr. Governor's approval, or we get Mr. Governor's approval first before going through procurement process. So I want to be sure whether you said that. If that is what I had, a situation whereby you do the procurement process up to through the PPA, and you now take the maybe on a certain, at a certain amount, maybe 85 million naira, and the paper, the memo get to Mr. Governor, and he reduced the amount. So he moderate the amount to maybe 80 million naira. What's going to happen? Does it mean that we are going to do the procurement process again? Or I want to say that it will be better for us to do the approval first and see the amount that Mr. Governor have approved. Then we now do the procurement process for it. So
Thank
I
you,
want
man.
your response.
You've done my job for me. You've answered part of the question. So you see, the issue is this. When we started ab initio, what we had was process before approval. You go do your process, then you write approval. But you know, before the coming of procurement, you would have approval. The governor would have approved, then you start the process. But indeed, the fact is that both processes are necessary. Both routes are necessary. There are procurement processes that suit route A and would be dangerous with route B. If the price of the item is volatile, it is better you do a process and then get approval and then buy straight. If the price is volatile and then you get approval and then by the time you do process up and down, blah, 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 in 2 months, 3 months, and you go to the market, the price has changed. So the system, the procurement process allows for both. What we need to do as civil servants is to understand the urgency and the nature of the expenditure we are going into and then apply the appropriate process. There are some where it is better go and get approval. Governor says you are not spending more than X million naira. Then you do your process X million naira. I stay within it. And then by the time you just finish your process, that X million naira can get you 35 of the items. You know that's what you have. You buy it immediately and you go on. There are some processes where you know what you just need. So you do the process and you do a proper submission to Mr. Governor. That look, this is it. Through this process, in fact, you list the service providers that you considered and everything you've done, and the final amount. In most cases, when Mr. Governor sees that, he will most likely just tell you, okay, that is what I want you to do. If he's changing anything there, we've seen the governor say, you say you want 20 million for 30 of it. He will tell you, take 150 million, then he will change the number that he has asked you to buy because he knows that you've done the process and he knows that that price will not get the number he wants you to buy. Or he doesn't want you to buy that much. Then you tell you to buy a reduced number and also reduce the amount. So all these things happen. But what is sacrosanct is that governor's approval must be maintained. So if you ask for 40 million and approve 40 million, whatever you have written that you want to do with that 40 million is what you must do. If you ask for 40 million for 30 items and he approves and to 30, he's saying that you go and buy the 30 items with the 40 million. Maybe because of his position, he has said that no, you can get it cheaper. But you must obey the governor's instruction or directive. You would only change what he has changed. If he does not change quantity, you can't change quantity. You will only change the amount. So he's telling you to go and get those items within the amount he has given you. That's the way it works. So you would, on your own, know whether you should do process before approval or approval before process.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. We are about to call it a day because we still have another class by 7 o'clock so that we can rest our eye. On this note, I will call on Mrs. Longema. Mrs. Longe.
What do you say me? I said
Mrs. Longe. Okay,
Yes,
you
sir.
have the floor. But I just want you to appreciate our
Thank you very much,
facilitator.
sir. Thank you very much, sir. We quite appreciate you. In fact, you are giving us an in-depth knowledge of what we need to understand about procurement. We really bless you. Thank you. God bless you.
All right, ma. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
God bless every one of us.
Amen.
So thank you, sir. So we are calling it a day now, so that please by 7 o'clock we have another class on financial reg. Okay, Mr. Is Kehinde still want to ask question? Okay, no. Okay, sir, Mr. Engineer Subha, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so
Let
much.
me leave you so
Thank
that I
you.
can
Thank
go
you.
and
Thank you.
rest.
It's been a
Thank you very
pleasure
much, sir.
speaking with you.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
To the content pink. Topic.